Today, I'm going to show you how to turn this into this, using only this. Now, painting my radiators is one of the first steps in modding my new PC. So if you don't want to miss the other mods or the final build, please make sure you subscribe. And this is not going to be a normal build, but a themed one. And I'll give you a small hint what the theme is going to be.
Truly wonderful the mind of a child is.
While I'll be showing you how to paint your radiator, the same process can be applied to any PC component. Just keep in mind that when you modify any component, you most probably will lose its warranty. So before you start modifying any component, please make sure that you tested it and it actually does work. Now for the paint, you'll need a primer, a base coat, it's basically your color, and a top coat. Now you can get away by just using a base coat, but if you want something durable, it's better to use all three of them. Now all of the spray paints that I'll be using in this video is from Rattle. I've had good experiences with their products in the past and they are quite easily available. Now there's several different types of primers, base coats and top coats, so it's important that you use the correct one for your application. The radiator that I'm painting today has a black polyurethane coating on it, and the correct primer for that will be the basic flat primer from Rattle. Now this will also work on any painted or powder coated surfaces and even plastics, but it will not work on aluminium parts or anodized aluminium parts. For that you'll need something like a self-etching primer. So before you start painting, just make sure you know what the material is you're painting on. And for the base coat, I'll be using this Oasis blue as the main color and some white for the logos. If you're only using a base coat and not a top coat, just make sure you select the base coat with the correct surface finished. I do believe they come in matte, satin and gloss. For the top coat, I'll be using a gloss clear finish, just to give it an extra layer of protection. And they also come in several different finishes, so just choose the one that you prefer. With the paint out of the way, you will also need some good quality masking tape and paper sheets, 400 grit sanding paper, paper towels and some clean cloths, some spare screws for mounting, some painter's tack cloth, isopropyl alcohol or mineral spirits, and then lastly your PPE, a respirator, glasses and gloves. First you want to cover the inlets with some tape or plugs. You don't want to paint the fins of the radiator. Doing that will only reduce the radiator's cooling efficiency. Use your masking tape and begin by masking the corners and then use the paper to cover the rest of it. Make sure to use a good quality masking tape that will not leave any residues afterwards. Once the fins are masked, you will have to remove any stickers and then sand the surface with 400 grit sanding paper. The goal is not to remove the paint, but only to scuff up the surface to give the primer something to adhere to. Once the radiator is sanded, clean the radiator with a brush or compressed air, wipe it down with a damp cloth and let it dry. Now attach your spare screws to the radiator. These screws will serve as a stand and handles while painting. Then while using your gloves, wipe the entire radiator with mineral spirits or some isopropyl alcohol. You have to make sure that there is no oils on the surface of the radiator that could prevent the paint from sticking to it. With the radiator ready to be painted, you can now start to prep the area where you will be spray painting. I'll be using the small fold-up spray booth with an air extractor that is equipped with the appropriate fan and air filters for painting with solvents. You can basically paint anywhere. Just make sure you paint in a well-ventilated area that has good lighting. Just before painting, I heat up the spray can with a bean bag or a bucket of warm water. Not too warm, just slightly above room temperature. This will thin out the paint and help you to spray more even coats. And to catch any leftover dust or fiber particles, I use a tack rag to wipe the surface before I start to spray the first coat. And the last thing before I start to spray is to make sure that the paint is well mixed. by shaking it for at least 2 minutes. The trick to getting quick drying times is to slowly build up the primer. I usually spray 4 coats. The first coat covering about 25% of the surface, the second coat 50%, the third coat 75%, and the final coat covering the entire thing. And make sure to give enough time between each coat for it to dry completely. I wait about 3 minutes between each coat. And to prevent the spray tip from clogging, clean it with some thinners between each coat and remember to keep the can warm. Okay, the primer is finished. I'm going to let it dry for about 20 minutes and then I'm going to start painting the base coat. Okay, I'm going to apply the base coat now and I'm going to use the exact same process as I did with the primer. The base coat is done. I'm going to have to let it dry for about 48 hours before I can add the stencils for the logos. It's finally time to paint the logos. Now, like I said earlier, I'm going to paint the logos with white spray paint. One thing to mention before you start painting over your existing paint or applying some stencils is to make sure that your existing paint is fully cured. Now, I've left this radiator for well over 72 hours in a room with relatively low humidity, so I know it's fully cured. If you start painting over existing paint that's not fully cured, you might risk having some paint flaking or cracking over time, and you're gonna have to start all over again. I've already applied the stencils and masked the rest of the radiator, so the only thing left to do is to paint it. And I'll be following the exact same steps as with the primer and base coat. And with the logos done, I'm going to leave it to dry for at least 48 hours before I start to remove the stencils and masking to apply the top coat. It's been just over 48 hours and I already removed the stencils and masking tape, and now it's finally time to paint the clear coats. This time I'm only going to be painting 3 coats, with the first one being very light and followed by 2 slightly heavier coats. And again, I'm going to give a few minutes between each coat to give it some time to dry. Okay, the clear coat is done and I'm going to leave it to dry for another 48 hours. The clear coat is fully cured now, and for most people you'll be done now. But for me, the finish is not quite there yet. So I'm going to slightly wet sand it with a 1000 grit sanding paper and then repeat the clear coat process again. Well, there you have it. The radiator is done, and I must say the second layer of clear coat really made a big difference. You can hardly see any orange peel on the surface, but if you really want to improve it even more, you can always use some cutting compound and some polish to completely remove all of the imperfections. I'll just recommend using it on something a little bit more flat, like a PC case for instance. The shape of the radiator with all of the curves and dents will make it very easy to burn through the clear coat while polishing. But if you really want to do it, just make sure to do it after the paint has fully cured. And that can take anything between 1 to 2 weeks depending on your climate. In fact, only start using the radiator after about 1 week and maybe 2 weeks if you're in a cold environment. Now this shows you that you can get a good finish with rattle cans. The only downside is that it takes forever, especially if you have to wait 48 hours between the coats. But if you want a faster process, then 2K finishes is definitely the way to go. With this, you'll be done within 2 days. The only downside is that you have to get a decent spray gun and a compressor, and that can get quite expensive. Now, like I said earlier, this video will be part of a PC building series. Now in my next video, I'll be modding this GPU water block, and I'll be only using woodworking tools to do it. Now, if you don't want to miss that, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Until next time, thank you for watching.